Good evening. It is an absolute pleasure to see a full house. Thank you for being here tonight. Welcome to our monthly town hall where we'll have a rich discussion around our schools and the things that matter to us the most. And to do so, sorry, my water bottle's here in the way, realizing it is a new year. So happy New Year to you all. But at the same time, in this new year, there's two things that we do, right? Probably make a few New Year's resolutions. Probably already failed some of those New Year's resolutions. But then it's the time to reflect. It's time to think about where we've been and where we need to go. So like we did last January, we had an opportunity to go through where we needed to go. That's the same process we're going to go through today, with the caveat, today's there's going to be a lot more table talk around what are those things we need to do, right? Before we do that, it's also important to reflect on where we have been. I don't know if you're aware, right before the holidays, we had, I don't know how to describe it other than just a pure act of love and care for another human being that I don't know if I can describe. But it happened at one of our schools. It happened at this school. There was a situation where someone had fallen ill, and we had 3 wonderful people step up and literally save a life. And to start off, I want to make sure that we honor and celebrate and thank those individuals for what they did. And our Police Chief Rivera, if you could come up for a moment, if you could help us with this presentation. I can get you a mic, or you can use my mic. I'll hold that for you.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Rivera. I'm the police chief in the city of Lorain, and this is my wife, Elba. And on November 27th, we received a call that our sister-in-law works here, that she had had a massive heart attack. And so we all rushed to the hospital, and when we got there the first couple hours, we were told by the doctor that the only thing they could tell us was that she was still alive, but they didn't know where it was going to go from there. But during the conversation, one of the things he said was, and we learned from him, the doctor, he said that her life was saved by the staff members here, because immediately they called for help, immediately they started CPR, and then they gave her the AED, and it took, from what I understand, about 6 Joes to bring her back. And he said he's a Cleveland Clinic trained cardiologist, and that had he been present, it couldn't have been any better. And so, my police officers and all first responders, firefighters, paramedics, we're trained to do this. And they're used to dealing every day in crisis. And so they do wonderful things out there. And I don't want to be, say it's part of their job, but it's rather routine at times. But what's not routine is when it happens in a location where there's no first responders present. And the idea that this school had the people that were trained, they had the equipment available, that it had been maintained so that it could be used, because if you don't maintain those AEDs, you find out that it doesn't work. All that combined in the teamwork that went into there and the love and care that she received, saved her life. And so we do want to honor the people involved.
Thank you. And I'm Alba. I'm Lillian's sister, and I want you to know that I am just so grateful to everyone involved in saving her life, because had it not been for these individuals here at Longfellow, she wouldn't be with us, and certainly we would be missing her an awful lot. She couldn't be here tonight because, although she wants to come back so bad, she couldn't be here because she had a cardiac procedure done and they had to keep her overnight. But she really wants to be back here, and she is so appreciative of everything that everybody did, and certainly the entire staff for all their letters and their cards and their caring. She wants to thank you for all of that as well.
So if it's okay, Mr. Hardy, then I'd like to call up Ryan Dickinson.
I want you to know that Ryan actually was one of my students at Lakeview.
Ryan, I'd like to present to you this on behalf of the Lorain Police Department. A certificate of recognition is presented to Ryan Dickinson. And all of these actually read the same, so I'll read the first one, okay, for Ryan. But it says, present a life-saving award in recognition of your outstanding efforts on November 27, 2018, in which you were directly responsible for saving the life of your co-worker, Lillian Barkas. On that date, Ms. Barkas, there goes my glasses. Ms. Barkas fell unconscious due to a cardiac arrest. Despite your own anxiety, you used your training and your teamwork to summon assistance, initiate CPR, and used an AED machine. She is alive today because of your quick action, professionalism, and your care and response. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to call up Amy Lauer.
Well, Amy, I also want to thank you very much. You've been there practically every day, you know, going to the hospital, letting her know how things are, giving her the letters that the children wrote, and she was very, very pleased with everything that you've done for her.
I can't wait to see it.
And ID, Rosario Rivera.
And Adi, this is the first time for me to meet you, but I also want to thank you very much for everything you did. And coincidentally, you know, when I found out what your name was, Rosario Rivera, I thought, wow, my maiden name and Sal's name.
Thank you, everything you did, okay?
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. If we could give them all just one last round of applause. When you think about the time that we have and how precious it is to have people actually save it for someone else, it means a lot. So thank you again for all that you've done. Chief, thank you as well for being here this evening. With that said, there are a lot of faces here today, so I won't go through formal introductions. I see a lot of faces of elected officials and otherwise, so I appreciate you being here this evening for this conversation, for this moment of reflection, but also our moment to look forward as well. And as we think about looking forward, it's a lot about how we think about what has happened in the past and what we think is really truly happening within our schools. So if you would like to participate, take out your cell phones for a second. There's a website you can go to, live.voxvote.com, and there's a PIN number. In a few minutes, we're going to go through just a series of about 5 random questions around education, around our school system and otherwise, in which I just want to hear your voice. Again, completely just a random vote in which you can voice your opinion on a few different things. Let me know if you have any trouble getting to that website or that PIN number. Oh, I'm so sorry. It would be nice if I get out of the way, right? I promise I will minimize that. I just want to make sure everyone is there. 27592. And it's probably going to say, where are my questions, right? If you hold on with me 1 second, I have to pull up the actual survey for us. It's blocking me. There we go. So you'll see there is a question up there, and Ms. Egan-Reeves, if I can have your help with this, please. Did everyone get to it okay? No? 27592. 27592 is the pin. People got it?
Standing in front of the website.
Sarah.
Sorry.
Oh, the bottom. We'll get it right.
27592 is the pin. Got to it? No. Still working to it? That's perfect. That's exactly, yep.
Right.
You're good. If there's a screen that pops up, you're good to go. So Sarah, go ahead and hit start. You should see a question pop up. And it asks you yes or no to this question. So the question is, do you believe kids learn differently than kids 20 years ago? Place your vote. Yes or no? Can you hit refresh for us, Sarah? Good, we have 64 users. We'll give a couple more seconds for folks to respond. Great. See if we can get 100 users. So we're saying right now, it probably won't change much. I can't imagine this flip-flopping, right? About 84% of us in this room right now that have voted have said, you know what? Kids do learn differently. Okay, just keep that in the back of our minds. How about question 2? Sarah, you're also on the screen. So, yeah. What is most important for our kids to become successful, happy adults? Is it a good home life, quality education, or a healthy lifestyle? Tough question. What are your thoughts? There's no D, all of the above. I'm sorry. Yep, refresh one time. Good home life, okay. Great, so we're saying right now, you know what? Our kids do learn differently, and it's important that they have a strong home life. Not to negate the importance of quality of education or a healthy lifestyle, but we're saying a good home life is important. Let's go to question 3 and see what we have. Longer question, but the question is basically getting at what percentage of our scholars that receive straight A's, all A's, in middle school or high school do you believe are ready for college and beyond graduating from high school? So kids that, the best of the best in your class, based on those grades that they receive, the highest grades they receive, are they ready for college? What percent? Is it less than 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, or 60 and above? Want to hit refresh for us? Interesting. Very, very interesting. Very interesting, huh? So we're kind of split between some, well, pretty evenly split. A good chunk say 40 to 60 or more than 60, but then there's a healthy chunk that also say less than 20. Okay, good to know. Let's go to the next question. Now, when we think about the state report card, what we are graded on, do you have a good understanding of it? Yes means I know exactly what it is saying. Somewhat is in the middle, but it's complicated, or I have no idea how to understand it. Okay, kind of middle of the road. I'm sorry, I keep jumping in your way. So somewhat of a split, but I would say there's a clear winner in somewhat but complicated. Fair?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go to the last question. So this last question is going to ask you to give one word to describe what we want our scholars, or what you would want our scholars to say when they leave Lorain City Schools. Just one word that you would want them to say about Lorain City Schools. Thank you. Very good. Bye? Okay. Interesting. Right, so the words that become more frequent or frequently responded with get bigger and darker. So the word that was repeated the most and is most common amongst the folks that voted, we have success and loved. I think two very powerful words, right? So to get us to a place where we have that success and love will take some work. If those are the words that we want our kids to say and believe when they leave us, we have work to do, right? This gentleman here talks about that work. He talks a lot about what it takes to make great schools. And I found this clip very important because if we want the words of success and love to be the prominent words that our kids say when they leave us, we have to face this reality. So let's watch this clip.
This year, there are going to be millions of our children that we're going to leave this neighborhood. That we could, right now, we could save them all. You saw the quality of the educators who were here. Do not tell me they could not reach those kids and save them. I know they could. It is absolutely possible. Why haven't we fixed this? All of us in education have held on to a business plan that we don't care how many millions of young people fail. We're going to continue to do the same thing that didn't work. And nobody is getting crazy about it, right? Enough to say enough is enough. So here's a business plan that simply does not make any sense. You know, I grew up in the inner city, and there were kids who were failing in schools 56 years ago when I first went to school. And those schools are still lousy today. 56 years later. And you know something about a lousy school? It's not like a bottle of wine, right? Where you say like 87 was like a good year, right? That's not the thing. I mean, every single year, it's still the same approach, right? One size fits all. If you get it fine, and if you don't, tough luck. Just tough luck. Why haven't we allowed innovation to happen? Do not tell me we can't do better than this. Look, you go into a place that's failed kids for 50 years, and you say, so what's the plan? And they say, we're going to do what we did last year, this year. What kind of business model is that? Banks used to open and operate between 10 and 3. They operate 10 to 3. They were closing the lunch hour. Now, who can bank between 10 and 3? The unemployed. They don't need banks. They got no money in the banks. Who created that business model, right? And it went on for decades. You know why? Because they didn't care. It wasn't about the customers. It wasn't about them. It was about bankers. They created something that works for them. How could you go to the bank when you were at work? same way, right? Now, one day, some crazy banker had an idea, maybe we should keep the bank open when people come home from work. They might like that. What about a Saturday? What about introducing technology? Now look, I'm a technology fan, but I have to admit to you all, I'm a little old. So it's a little slow, and I did not trust technology. And when they first came out with those new contraptions, these tellers that you put in a card and they give you money, I was like, there's no way that machine is going to count that money right. I am never using that, right? So technology has changed. Things have changed. Yet not in education. Why?
He leaves us with a question, why? Why don't we change? We all said that kids learn differently, right, than 20 years ago. We all say that the challenges are beyond just a quality education. A quality home life is equally important. But as educators, as an education system, as a system of schools, why don't we change enough is the big question. So we're going to think about this question. We're going to think about how to pull this together through some conversations in a few minutes. And it goes through this, if you heard of it, the Johari Window. And the Johari Window says this. Basically, there are 4 different quadrants in which we see and receive information. In the far right corner in the bottom here, the unknown. Things we don't know and that someone around you doesn't know as well. That's just the unknown stuff to all of us. If you go to the left, to the hidden column, you'll see there are things that are known that you know to yourself but others are not aware of. And there's things that are out in the open. There are things that people know about you that you may not actually see. There are things that people know and that other people that have these things within them also know, so everyone can see. And this last quadrant is around that blind spot. That place where we don't look inwardly enough, or we don't ask for people outwardly to help us see what we can't see. So this idea of having food on your face, a true friend will take care of you if they tell you you have food on your face. Because that's something you can't see, but they can. So as we think about this, tonight is about bringing up a mirror to ourselves, not a microscope. Tonight is about having a conversation around where our kids are and what we can do about it, using data to see what we need to see, which we may not have seen before. Because the reality of the situation, what Mr. Canada was talking about, is not just an epidemic that is, here in Ohio, not just in Lorain. It is a national challenge. However, the difference is there are school districts that do something about it. And tonight is about doing something about it. Similarly to Wells Fargo. Anyone Wells Fargo bankers in here? I am a Wells Fargo banker myself. The challenge is, can anyone tell me where that one Wells Fargo is in the state? I can. It's about 3.5 hours from here. And when I first got here, I had to deposit a check. And 3.5 hours later, I was able to find it. But Wells Fargo did something years ago. Wells Fargo decided, you know what, we're going to be the first to figure out how to change our outcomes. And you can see there was a moment in time in their history, this is the revenue that they received over time from the 80s all the way through the 2010s. And there was a spike. You see those 2 larger bars there? Anyone want to take a guess what happened in 94 and 96? What happened? ATMs? What else? Extended hours? Regardless, they innovated, right? They innovated to a place where they decided, you know what, ATMs need to be the way that we communicate and get money to and from people, and putting our banking online. So those changes dramatically changed the trajectory of Wells Fargo. They went from a company that had a net income way below $100 million to $283 million and then upwards to $841 million because they decided to change, to innovate, and looked in the mirror and realized that they needed to do so. So when we look at our report card, our history of our report card, the challenge of this is that I think at times we realize we have to look at our history. We have to see where we were to see where we need to go. And historically, year after year, We unfortunately have been getting reports from the state saying that we are not performing at the level that we need to do. This dates back way to 2003. Year after year. They've then changed in around 2012 to a A through F scale, and it hasn't changed for us. So the idea that we can continue to do the same thing over and over and expect different results is not a business model I think we can endorse any longer. So as we think about this, take that reality and the reality of our kids. How many people knew that after millennials was Generation Z? Right? Let's see what we need to know about Generation Z.
There are boomers, there's Gen X, there's my box, the millennials. But young people are covered by more than just that title. Gen Z is the next wave. And turns out there's quite a bit that makes them uniquely better. The new kids on the block or in your office aren't just millennials anymore.
But I feel like, for me, like millennials are grown-ups.
The freshest faces are those of Generation Z, while millennials are roughly defined by being born between 1981 and 1995. Those dubbed Gen Z were born from 1996 on, with the oldest of them now in their early 20s. But it's more than just their birth years that set these two generations apart. We went straight to the source and talked to Zach, Sammy, Annabelle, and Emily, who we found the Gen Z way on Snapchat.
What do you think makes Gen Z Gen Z?
I think it's internet engagement.
You were born with it, so you don't really know a world without it.
While most millennials can remember life before smartphones and social media, Gen Z has never known a world without the internet in their pocket.
Literally, our friend group at school primarily communicates through Snapchat.
These platforms have caused Gen Zers to see the job market in a new way.
What does success mean to you guys now? People in our generation are really looking for the success in the way of living on your own terms.
That means looking to social media platforms for viable career opportunities, causing some to think about education differently.
Do you guys think that given social media opportunities that going to college is necessary anymore? I really think that we're like moving towards a time where a degree isn't necessarily important.
They multitask with ease. Their digital fluency allows them to take on a lot at once, sometimes coming across as unfocused. They say it's focused, the Gen Z way.
Never on really one social media at a time. You're on Snapchat, you want to see what's happening on Instagram, and then, oh, someone's texting me on WhatsApp.
Short attention spans mean trends evolve fast.
So when your parents find out about it, it's about the time that we're on the downhill.
As soon as it leaves the generation, then it's like, okay, they're too old, so it's like, it's not cool anymore.
Access to social media and technology has made Gen Z more global.
We're the first generation that's really grown up with the tools that make us able to connect with anybody across the world with the click of a button.
Nick, James, Ziad Ahmed, and Shine Zafar, all under 20, founded and run a consulting firm, helping Fortune 500 companies and startups alike reach Gen Z successfully. Cole Maddox runs a hedge fund from his dorm room. They want you to know they're ready for a seat at the table, especially since Gen Z is now the largest percentage of the population at over 25%, and represents up to $143 billion in buying power.
We're positioned to overtake millennials as the largest generation by the end of 2019. But if you don't start working with us now, you're going to miss the boat.
And don't underestimate what else they're up to on their phone.
So give me a short answer to older people saying to you guys, here's the powers on our phone.
You have no idea what I'm doing. We're not sitting on our phone ignoring the world around us. We're sitting on our phone interacting with hundreds of people.
This generation wants you to know just because they care about followers doesn't mean they don't care about friendships. And it doesn't mean they're disconnected from what happens in the world.
We as a generation, we're so diverse. We're also the most inclusive generation. Like, we know as a generation what we want to see in our leaders.
Young people have always been standing up for things, always been disrupting the status quo, always been rewriting time. What's unique about our generation is that the tools that we have access to allow for these disruptions to become mainstream.
So we think about history of failing schools and we see an image of our kids, a disconnect. Very tangible example, my 5-year-old son, we were driving and he wanted to know the answer to something, and I said, well, how can we figure that out? And he was in the back seat, and I adjusted my rear view mirror to kind of see him because he got really quiet back there, and he was sitting there kind of looking out the window and saying, well, Dad, I think we should ask Google. Right? That's the time we now live in. No longer is it a space where, you try to find out your answers through the dictionary, or my grandparents used to say, look in the encyclopedia, right? It's now ask Google. So when we think about where we are and what is happening nationally, what we need to do and who we're now educating, we need to look in the mirror. It's our chance to look in the mirror. So that we no longer have to look at this. There's a day when I do not want to have to show this as our slide. And if I do show this slide, it says something a lot different. But for the sake of our conversation, I want us to understand that when we think about achievement, it's very important that we think about what our achievement is actually telling us. That is really the litmus test to tell us how our kids are performing on what the state deems is important. Granted, we may have differing opinions on whether state assessments or otherwise are the best way to do so. However, this is the game we have to play. Fair? So when we look in the mirror, we realize a few things. We realize at the end of the day that our kids have to meet a certain mark achievement-wise throughout the school year, every year, and those scores land in our kids' portfolio, whether they're advanced or otherwise. They eventually get to a point where they are about to leave high school, and they have to get a score, ACT remediation-free score. It's hard to see up here. I apologize for the eye chart that I created for you all. But you can see up here, there's ACT score, a non-remediation, or remediation-free score of 18 on English, 22 on reading, and 22 on math. But here's the challenge. That's just to get in. That's the minimum. Our kids have big dreams. Happened to walk into a kindergartner's classroom, and I said, you know what is it that you want to do? You know what? I want to go to Stanford University. Stanford. Stanford's not a school. You can't get in there with the 22. If you look up here, Stanford's probably one of these 10 up here, and actually it's number 1. You need a 31 on the ACT. So when I see kids like this one, this is one of our scholars who graduated last year, and I actually pulled all of our grades. I had someone from our team pull all of our grades of all of our kids who graduated in 2017 and 2018, and I wanted to see all their grades. I then sifted for every child that received an A or higher. I found kids that had straight A's through all their grades, and this happens to be a young person that had straight A's. Straight A's throughout high school. They then go on to realize at the end of this, they want to go to college. I have straight A's, I'm ready to go. They face the reality that they have to get a remediation-free score, or there's other ways to get into college, don't get me wrong, but a remediation-free score would get them to maybe some of those schools on that list, right? This young person worked hard all the way through our system, K through 12, believes she's getting an excellent education, and gets these results. So for her English score, she got 17. She got a 17. For her reading score, that is the one where she wasn't remediation free, she was a 24. It bothers me because this kid had dreams. This kid's dreams. Believes they're doing the right thing all the way through to get to this moment and told they're not good enough. If that doesn't get you fired up or upset or something, I don't know what will. So I ask, what do we do about this? So this young person happens to be one of our kids, and I apologize, these slides, I don't know if lighting would help, but these slides indicate just even more data around these kids who are deemed not ready for college. At the top, you'll see all of our Lorain high school grads who had left us over the past 5 years and have decided to enroll in LCC. And after LCC, they had to take a remedial math or a remedial English because they didn't have the scores necessary to be successful in high school. And then at the top, you will see that those numbers are middle of the road, and the 60s and 70% of our kids have to take a remedial course after they leave us. Early college, thank goodness, does a tremendous job of getting our kids prepared, and those numbers are significantly lower. So if we take out the early college numbers and just focus on the grads who did not have early college or dual enrollment, in 2018, 93% of our kids that left Lorain High and went on to LCCC needed a remedial math or remedial reading. 93%. So we think about the gravity of the work that we do. What we're setting our kids up for is the reality of, there's costs that go with those remedial courses. And so every time you take a remedial course, that goes into our kids' pockets at that point. And if you add up the numbers and start to see, we could be costing our collective graduating classes almost $100,000 in personal debt for our reluctance to change. So this mirror is our mirror. And this is going to be our conversation. Talk about what we need and want to do about this. Because this statement could go one of two ways. I ask us to be this. Take a minute at your tables. Think about the things that resonated with you about what you just saw. Talk at your tables. Jeff, guys. All right, folks.
You took away all the titles and services for our low-performing kids. You also
How about this? Our school program, the kids don't like math skills, not a problem. College is right on top. That's why the state representatives are sitting over there and stop the university from raising tuition. I'm going to stand up and point out, so you want to pass it up in the state, we don't raise tuition. Whatever, circle.
I went to that with her state lecturer. I want to punch her again.
He almost wanted me to get you know what? Nope, he's looking at your
right. And it's a waste. Write your questions on the write your questions. I'll answer your questions. I go, no, you won't. You have a strong way, you won't do it. So I took a picture of the questions that I wrote. So I'll see if they're on your frequently asked questions. They've done nothing for academics. Nothing. Every building I presented to the spouse,
So in a moment, you're going to have a chance to respond to three 3 individual questions, but I want to make sure we're prepared to feed off the conversation you just had into some really fruitful conversation, because here's what's going to happen. Tables should have or should be getting a large sheet of Post-it paper to start to jot down some of the challenges, solutions, and ultimately some potential opportunities we have, so that our team can collect your thoughts and add it to what we need to do to prioritize for next year, which we'll talk about on February 21st. So with that said, at your table, if you haven't received it already, you should receive a packet, or you might have a purple folder that has some data similar to the data that I presented a little bit earlier. The top sheet are the district's ACT scores over the past 5 years. Behind that, you'll see by school our state report card grade. Behind that, you'll see what we call our big board. So folks that are not familiar with this, this was a big move for us to increase the level of transparency around how we're performing and what we're doing, because that was a big question that was brought to us, that we're just not being transparent enough. And so we went to a space where we wanted to be overly transparent around what things we're actually seeing. So in this big board, you'll see 3 areas that we focus on: academics, effort, and behavior. And then you'll see how schools kind of scored out against those metrics. All right? So at your table, you'll have a chance to open that up and look at that more deeply. And the goal is this, folks. Back to this window to think about how we're performing, we want to get to the space of looking at our blind spot. Here's our chance to look at, you know what, we need to hold this mirror up and look at the things we may not completely know and figure out what we want to do about it. Okay? There may not be enough copies, so if you need more, we can get more. Just raise your hand and we'll bring them to you. But through these conversations, I hope we unearth some really important information. So those things should be at your desk. I'll be right there, Ms. Washington. I'll be right there. The next 3 slides will be a question. There will be some time to respond to each question. I'll leave each question up for about 5 minutes for your table to discuss. First question. Based on the data at your tables, what challenges do you see? What challenges do you see? Based on the data that you have at your table, what challenges do you see? About 5 minutes at your table to digest that, look at some numbers. I'll give you a little bit of a warning. Have fun conversing.
You want us to look at these numbers.
She just throwing herself on the
It's like, I got married at 18, like right off the rest of me, I was making sure, hey, about $200,000 for a house, and they would be like, you walk in saying, college, but he's like $200,000. What makes, if you ask right now, you go to the register and you said I need $100,000. What he's going to ask you, how much money do you need? So why?
Third, I wanted to he started taking lessons at Baltimore with me. Like, well, now I want to be professional. Okay. We're ninth grade. I guess we'll figure it out by the time. Yes, ma'am. I know. And I can't get second grade right to figure it out. I'm like, really? I'm not paying for it. I'll copy it. and stuff.
Yeah.
You say what?
That's been about 5 minutes, but I see folks in deep conversation, so I'll add 1 more minute before we move to the next question. Please make sure you capture your thoughts around the challenges you do see, the challenges you are seeing in this data, and jot those down for us, please. Thank you.
7th, 8th grade is multiplication division, but then it jumps up to
I guess I should have now. I'm a teacher, so I should have I'm at breakfast center. Parents there or sometimes worse. I just like, I don't want my kids rejected.
All right. I know you're deep in conversation, but I'm going to move us to question 2 for the sake of time. I'm going to move us to question 2. So those are the challenges. You identified some challenges. I see a lot of good information and challenges down on paper. Very helpful. Next piece. If you have to turn your paper over, that's fine as well. Based on the data now, what do you see are possible solutions? What are solutions to the challenges you just came up with? For example, at X school there's low performance, so maybe we should Y, whatever that might be. What are those solutions? About 5 minutes around this question.
What are the 2 biggest issues with kids graduating? You were to kick them out of the house.
How to live on their own.
I don't feel like that. College jobs.
Yeah, but see, he's considered bringing us a great number to score card.
So where decisions are made, that's the most important places to get to where those decisions are made. So what happens is you talk about the impact you have. You got to realize because I know folks who are not married, they're in a relationship, they're in a household. So what you say is, how can we give you more resources to help you better function? Because you're not married, you're not going to withhold good information. So you can change, you can kind of change your mindset. Just saying this is very and traditionally, education was commodity. If you fit this mold, you didn't get it.
All right. So in a second, we're going to move to question 3. But before we go to question 3, if I can have your attention just momentarily. Before we go on to question 3, I just want to make sure you know, because some folks have questions, and as we go, because of the size of the room, we have actually placed note cards on your tables to jot down your questions, so we can collect them and then answer the questions at the end. So if you have questions as you go, like, hey, I want to ask you this or that or the other, I think that might have come from over here at some point, please write them down so that we can go at the end and answer your questions, okay? So make sure you write your questions down on note cards. But here is question 3. Nope, that's still question 2. Based on that data, we came up with challenges, solutions. What other things should we consider? What are those other things that may not fit directly into the data that you saw, but are things we should still consider? If you could jot that down, that would be great. Gratefully. More paper? Yeah, you can turn it over to the other side. That's fine. All right, what else should we consider? 5 minutes, feel free to have that conversation. What else should we consider? Challenge, solutions, and other considerations.
There's nothing I wouldn't say to his face. What's he gonna do? Fire his I'm certain I'll be here longer than he will. I trained everybody. So
Mr. Hawks is grabbing note cards. If you do have questions, jotting them down. If you're wondering if the Cowboys will win over the weekend, you can ask that question as well for Cowboys fans.
So you had a show. You had people interacting. So the experience, but there's been no input. Whenever you look, for me, it's control. Like your body is designed. So our input, all this can be stated statistically, data-wise. You haven't asked me.
I get anxiety every day.
Stress.
All right. So finish your last thought. Finish your last thought. Jot it down on paper.
It needs to be established. We all should be learning to stand.
For the sake of time, the chances of getting to every table in the next 30 minutes might be challenging, so I might just call on just a few tables to share out what they might have come up with. Dr. Brown, can I start with your table, please? Hold on one second. Just give your challenges, solutions, and potential other options, if you don't mind. Microphone's coming towards you.
Some challenges that we noted at our table was that we doubled the number of scholars who took the ACT in 2018, and we also noticed a drop in the scores that year. We're wondering how that impacted it. And when we look at chronic attendance across all of the schools, that was a consistent area of error where students were missing more than 10% of school at every single school. And one recommendation that we came up is, could we use flexible schedules and start times for students who are not there, maybe utilization of virtual classrooms so that we can still continue the learning even though they're not in the building.
Great, thank you. That solution is very similar. I can't remember who has been bringing up at past town halls the idea of high school. The start time for high school is way early, so that's something that I think is a viable thought and solution. So I appreciate the flexible schedules comment. Let's go to another table. AJ, do you mind what your table might? You don't have to share. You can pick on Alicia Pardon or someone else at your table. It's the hat. I was drawn to the hat.
AJ. All right, so we said the first one was family engagement. State tests have changed each year for the past 3 years. We keep making curriculum changes, administrative changes, and state tests are culturally biased. A solution is parent involvement. Legislative changes need to happen and create a culturally competent exam. The third thing is they said title services, resources to help the teachers, wraparound services, and more busing.
Great, great. This might be dying. Oh, there we go. I'll take a third table. Okay. Sorry. We'll do 3 and 4. They both went up at the same time. You can go ahead. Feel free. They kind of put you on the spot, huh, Chief? They'll go first. That's fine.
So our table, great table. Appreciate the input of these great folks. We said some of the challenges were there's only pockets of positive places on the report card grades. I think Marge said maybe the work and the teaching isn't necessarily related to the kids' lives, and it might not have been Marge. But the solution is tie the curriculum to the kids' lives, get the kids interested. Sandy brought that one up. He was like, you know what? He's like, I don't believe the kids are dumb, they're disinterested. And so the solution was tapping into the kids' interest and asking the kids how they want to learn. And we had a great example here. When my neighbor was in school, the teacher actually talking to the kids and saying, let's go through these various topics and what topics are most interesting to you. Embracing the differences of kids and just the importance of learning languages was brought up, right, at our table. So thank you guys.
last but definitely not least, bring us home.
Okay, I mean, a lot of the things that were said were great. I mean, wonderful, you know, and hopefully there will be some solutions in order to get to where the schools need to be. However, we looked at the challenges, and one of the challenges, and I think that a lot of you said the same thing, was that family involvement and the environment from which our students come. You know, that they don't have what they need in their homes in order to be able to perform well in school. I think another challenge is providing updated textbooks, you know, aligned to current state standards, okay? I think also another challenge is the apathy to motivate students to study and to develop an interest in a quality education. They have to feel good about what they're doing. They have to feel that they are good, and that has to be ingrained in them, you know, that, hey, you know, you really need this education in order to be successful in life. Whether you go to college or whether you go somewhere else and get a different kind of training, but you do have to have a quality education. And I think we talked about the fact that that we also have to have some alignment of curriculum and to what is expected on the ACT and the SAT test, and that we should provide training for students in taking the ACT and the SAT, and then also provide them with opportunities to take those tests as a practice test, you know, more than just one time when it is going to count and say, this is what you have and this is what you've got in order to get into college.
Thank you so very much. So some common threads that started to jump out, one of which is around parent involvement. How do we get more of our families involved? How do we make sure we're reaching out to them and making them part of not only the process, but the ability for our kids to be successful? We need them, right? I heard another theme around the curriculum. Curriculum from the sense of aligning it to the expectations of where kids need to be. I promise I'll be right there. Where kids need to be, but also making it interesting and engaging and relevant to their needs and what they see in them. Short story, there was a young lady who actually emailed me earlier this week about the desire to having a course that helps her understand her history. Beautiful outline of wanting to know what it means to be a Hispanic American woman. It's a conversation that I don't think we have enough. And the fact that a young person, one, realizes that and realizes the need, I think, is powerful. So that alignment to what our kids are asking for, I think, is crucial. The third I hear loud and clear is something around how we build our schedules and days and how we actually configure this learning for kids in a way that kids can receive it and accept it. So is there something there on how we think about how we actually create the day where a kid can be successful? I think that actually stems a lot from that video where we see a lot of Gen Zers who are on the phone at all hours of the day. So how do we think about those elements as well? Did you have one other thing you wanted to add before I move to the...
Because I keep hearing a lot about college, college, college. We've got to face facts. A lot of our kids do not have the wherewithal and are not going to have the support system to go to college. So what are we doing to make sure that they have the skills when they walk out that door for the very last time?
That's right.
That they can get a job and that they can survive and not become a victim to the system. And we've got to go and recognize those kids too, because they get left behind.
That's right.
Not everybody.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. How do we ensure those kids do not get left behind? Completely agree.
Mr. Hart,
completely agree.
Coming from a younger person, we have so many kids graduating that have no life math skills. We hammer out
life math skills?
Life math skills.
Gotcha.
How credit cards work, how to build your credit, how to file your taxes. What are these loans you're taking to college? You know what? And the manager standing over here, I advocated when I ran for Congress last year. We can talk about free college, or it should be what it is now, but we got to pass a bill to stop these universities from raising tuition. It's over with. It's been a monopoly. You've told these kids to go to school. there's not enough people to get into those schools, so they raise the tuition. I don't care if you got a 30 on your ACT or SAT, whatever score you got. You've got these kids, you tell them you got to get a nursing degree and go to Cincinnati, you end up $100,000 in debt. Then that nurse goes and makes 30 bucks. No, she's really, or he's making $15. You want to change things? You got to stop the monopoly of the people that's created this. We spend so much time on all these other subjects, but there's subjects that we need to know: how to vote, how to be involved in school. How many community service projects have we done with our kids? Going out in the public, engaging them, picking it, whether we go picking up a park.
Yep.
Those are simple things you engage kids with, and until we come to reality that college is not affordable. There's 3 girls right now that are working at the Boys and Girls Club where I work at, and they're in their earlier 20s. They can't afford to go to school because their parents are going to pay for their school.
Yep.
So there's no. So you know what? It doesn't matter we're talking here, because until we find a way to institute life math skills as a core curriculum in our education system to prepare these kids, until we stop these public universities from raising tuition, it's scary as a young person to find yourself going into debt.
Absolutely.
The other generations didn't have to deal with that, but this younger generation has to. So until state legislators can figure that out and get things done, that's why I'm here today.
Okay.
And it's going to take younger people like Mary, and people on the council, they're going to stick up and stand up, and they're talking for us to show the community that we're going to work together and do things. Until that happens, whatever you're saying here.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. So I appreciate both of those sentiments, because I think they're equally as important in the sense that, one, we have to...
Thank you. Hi, my name is Merle Johnson. I'm a member of the State Board of Education, District 11. And first, I just want to say it's a wonderful turnout, and I really appreciate it. I care for Cleveland because I care about you. What the gentleman just mentioned in the back is financial literacy. And if you go on the Ohio Department of Education website, there are financial literacy standards that are being developed for Ohio. So also, we've put together a strategic plan, and I know everybody's busy, but if you're ever sitting with nothing to do, I would really like for you to look at the Ohio Department of Education and look at our strategic plan that the State Board of Education just put together. You will find that a number of the things that have been mentioned in this room are in our strategic plan. So we're on the same page. It's just a matter of being able to implement it to make these schools what your students deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. I agree. I think the importance of that curriculum, the importance of that real life application is equally important, and making sure we're not leaving kids behind. I don't want to lose those 3 thoughts that came up from the 3 individuals that spoke. So with that said, we as a district have also spent some time looking at the same data, mining more information, and there's a few things we also saw very similar to the things that you pointed out, but aligned it to our schools as a district. Looking at the district level, here are a few things that we saw. One, we're seeing on the positive side, our elementary schools' attendance and performance is improving through different avenues that are going on during the year. I think that is something that we should be celebrating. There's excellence that are happening in our schools, and it's happening early. Is it happening enough? That's a greater question, but it's starting in our elementary schools. We're improving the accuracy of how we're grading our kids. I mentioned earlier about the story of the young person who got straight A's and then was led to that led ultimately in getting an ACT score that didn't match the grade she was receiving. So we're spending time thinking about how we grade our kids more accurately, aligned to the standards in which they need to master. Elementary schools, we're seeing fewer incidents of suspensions or incidents leading to suspensions. While on the other side, we're seeing in our middle or high schools, as you saw from the data, you probably saw a little bit more red in the big board in our middle and high schools. You saw a little bit more underperformance in our middle and high schools. And you're also just seeing the reality that we have to do more in those grades. It starts earlier, but realizing it's reflecting itself in our middle and high schools. And lastly is the piece that I think is great to see this level of engagement, because I think the voices that we need will only be in this room will make us better. We need all voices to make this better. So the fact that we engage in a deep conversation at your tables around what is necessary will only get us further faster. We also had very similar conversations at the district level. We spoke to principals, all of the admin building, Community business partners meeting, if you've attended, raise your hand if you've been to one of those meetings. At the last meeting, you probably remember this chart, because this was the chart that we shared of some initial ideas around priorities for next year, and you kind of ranked them and gave us some feedback. You'll see a lot of the elements that you were talking about tonight pulled through here, right? So initially we were talking about what is that curriculum? What are the standards-driven instruction practices? What do they look like? What do they need to sound like? We talked a lot about creating that culture of learning and joy. So the gentleman in the back who was talking about financial literacy, part of that joy is creating a curriculum that attaches our kids to the work that they will experience later in life and making it real and fun. And this last one is around how we think about our collective schools and how we approach collective development of our schools and expectations for what they look like. And that's where we kind of started, I would say, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It then evolved to something a little bit smaller because there was a loud cry in the sense and a productive piece of feedback, like that's a lot on one slide, to the point that you can't quite see it. I'm almost done, I promise. That you can't quite see it. And so then we said, let's simplify this a bit. Let's pull it together and realize, you know what? Let's identify what it means to have an excellent school. Again, starts to pull some of these ideas that you're getting at, and I think we'll actually tweak a few based on your thoughts. So 1, thinking about how we provide instruction. 2, live up to our expectations. And then 3, just create that joy of learning and reflection. Right? But if nothing else that we need to do, as the biggest priority for next year, or at least the proposed priority, is just create a system of excellent schools. Just one school system that works. Now, what is it and what isn't that? What do I mean by that? Since I got here, we started thinking about what it will take for us to move in a new direction. Hence, the Lorain Promise came out. Lorain Promise has 5 components in it, and we realized the importance of focusing on those 5 pieces. But even when looking at those 5 pieces, there's one that jumps out, and that's commitment 4. When we talk about the creating spaces where scholars and teachers and leaders can thrive. In order to do that, we have to create schools that do that across the district. And so those systems, those schools, need to operate as one, because right now we see excellent in schools, but we don't have an excellent system of schools. And that's where we need to move. Where we're not going to go, which I think is the apprehension and the fear, is that, so does that mean you're going to privatize Lorain? You're going to move to this space where charter schools become Lorain? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That is not the goal for what we need to do to create a system of excellent schools. What we need to do is figure out the challenges our schools have, breathe life into those schools, and give flexibility to schools to realize the greatness that lives within them. I don't think we need the outside influences of charters to be in our space. We can figure this out. It's a conversation around this community, not the outside. So to clarify, creating a system of excellent schools means we, as a community, need to stand up and define that excellence and carry it through. That's all it is. That's all it is. I see 2 hands. And then I'm going to read these 3 questions, and then we are out of time. Yes? I said those 2 hands right there. Yes. Actually, I think there's more questions than 3. I apologize.
One of the things that you went past on there, but you had mentioned in your State of the Schools address the other day in the video, was the low survey responses, the staff not turning those in. And I know you've referenced that several times. But I also, 2 issues with that. One, it was not necessarily anonymous. The first whole page of it had 7 questions, I believe, which indicated how long have you worked in the district, what buildings are you at, what grades do you teach, what do you teach? That was very pointed. That also went directly through Google accounts that were ours.
Yep.
So it was not, and when we have teachers that are escorted out of buildings and things like that for, suspected mishaps to be investigated, people don't feel safe answering those surveys. So if something could be done that was truly anonymous, even if it was paper pen, we'd hand it in, that'd be great. The question I had for you earlier, and I know I'm absconding with this mic.
You're fine.
The ACT score is listed on the back of that paper. It looks at the scores from 2014 all the way through last year.
Yes.
My concern with that is, or my question about that is it looks like we've had a consistent decline since the state has taken over, which is questionable to me. I mean, especially in the past 2 years, our scores have gone down almost 2 points consistently across the board. And then lastly, my third question, there's been information going around that you had sought outside of the state employment through Chicago. If that's the case, where does that leave the status of the district? If you were to leave and go get employment somewhere else in the midst of this, does the process start over? What happens to our kids? What happens to our community that's building this trust?
Right.
So I would just like to know kind of where that stands for the kids.
Sure, sure. Thank you for those questions. Thank you. I think the first one is definitely duly noted. We had an opportunity to speak to a bunch of different individuals about that very concern, from a group of teachers that meet with us. It's also been brought up to us through other avenues, or teacher union, things of that nature around those concerns. Like, it wasn't anonymous. It was so, to the point where there was a union rep who said, you know, there's only 2 of me in this union, and if I answer all these questions, I'm a guy, she's a lady, you're gonna know who it is, right? And we apologize profusely for that, because we actually want to make sure, we want to make sure that we get the information, and we made the mistake of maybe asking too many questions. The reason why we did ask those questions is because we want to make sure we know who we need to help and support with those individual answers, because otherwise, if we just kind of throw it all into one bucket, we may not be able to decipher who really is asking for what. Now, we don't want individual names, but we would want to know if this school is seeing a need versus this school, right? You might say at Hawthorne Elementary versus Lorain High, you could argue their needs are probably pretty different. And that survey was intended to grab that difference, and without some demographic information, we might have lost some of that information. Is that something we need to fix? Absolutely. And will we fix it? Absolutely. The second question around ACT scores, I couldn't agree with you more, right? Goes back to Jeffrey Canada's point around, if it continues to decline on whoever was in leadership in that time, we have to do something different. You're absolutely right. I don't disagree with that. I think one of the big shifts we made last year, if you look at the number of kids that were tested, our focus last year was to get more kids exposure to the ACT. So when you increase the denominator of that problem and the scores remain the same, you're going to see a dip in scores. That doesn't mean that's right or wrong, but that's the reality. But we need to then figure out, now that we have our kids testing, how do we improve the instruction to prepare them for such assessments? So I wholeheartedly agree. There are countless meetings when we look at numbers like, man, this still is happening. What do we have to do about it? The first step is holding that mirror up and saying, okay, what do we do? Then figuring out the plan and then moving on. So I appreciate you raising that. The third, which I apologize if I have a smirk on my face, it's kind of funny to me. I was a Michael Jordan fan. I love Chicago. But I did not interview in anywhere near Chicago. I think another comment I heard was I was in Europe. I wasn't in Europe. And so to answer that question sincerely is, there's no doubt that my heart is here. I want to be part of the solution. You have my word, you have my presence, you have all these other people as witnesses. I want to be a part of that solution. And I think part of that solution means opening up new conversations and communication lines. I'm encouraged by conversations that I've already had through informal chat lines with our Board of Education, because I know that has been a point of community, like, why isn't this getting right? Why aren't you talking to the board? I think now there's momentum to do so, and I'm excited to engage in those conversations. And I'm excited for us to actually think about partnership in a way that makes sense for this community. And so if that's an olive branch to show that that's another level of my commitment, please know that it's coming. Because I think it's important for people to see, I don't want to go anywhere, nor do I desire to educate anywhere else in America. I want to be here. Sure. Oh,
Just to follow up really quick, I don't think I clearly understood that. Did you or did you not interview elsewhere?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I did not.
Ask him what is up there.
Speaking of the open communication lines, I'm asking for you to give us the time to go over the questions and answers that we've submitted today.
Yes, so I will have a few because some of them were repeats, so hopefully some of your answers will come through. We have the rest of the cards, and we'll do it online, like we've done with other FAQs, and just answer the questions. Okay? Does that answer your question, Ms. Washington?
They want to put you on blast.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We were talking about open lines of communication,
Yeah.
I'm trying to be respectful, but we haven't had a chance to communicate with you. The last town hall was canceled. There's been a couple people that have waited for emails. Yes, so we have the time. We'd appreciate if you'd give us yours and answer the questions.
Okay, I have no problem answering
questions. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's no problem.
How do you expect our students to succeed when you are constantly berating the people who are presented to them, in front of them, all day, 5 days a week? Can you address the fact that the information that you gave about the attendance rate for the teachers was inaccurate? That was proven, that the data says it. Who gave you that data?
So a few things. I want to answer the first question because it does bother me, honestly.
Hold on, no.
That there's a feeling of
how does it bother you when you constantly put out the same information over and over, and you just put on there low response to the survey, and it wasn't to say you're sorry, but then when this lady brought it up, oh, I'm so sorry, we apologize profusely. Where? Because all you do is put out publications about how bad our teachers are and how much they're missing school and they're not doing this and they're not doing that. You've never apologized publicly. So don't you think that would be important? If you're going to publicly chastise someone, why would you not publicly apologize?
Gotcha. So I appreciate the question. I think what I hear more than anything else in that situation, in that comment, is that as a leader in this district, I have to do a better job of celebrating those teachers are doing well and spend less time narrating what is perceived as negativity. And I think that statements in which I do make when I am attempting to balance two things. I think there's a challenge of not providing transparency around what is happening and what the community may or may not see. I feel as a leader it is my job to share that. Is there a better way to do it? Yes, I agree, and I apologize for not expressing it in a way that allows for people to see the reality so we can fix it, and rather than people have internalized it as a failure. And that's on me. I'm not finished my answer. Okay, it's okay. I promise I won't move on. I won't move on. So when we think about the challenge in front of us, when I display information that gives indication that we're not moving in the right direction, please know, and I'm saying this to everyone here, my intent is to share information, not to demean. And if it has been demeaning, I do apologize. As far as teacher attendance goes, there was and if you're not familiar with it, and I think you're referring to the FAQ question in the Titan touch points. Is that probably where you're talking about? There was a data point in there about around the teacher incentive and why it kind of came about and all those pieces of information. Neither here nor there. I had made a statement in August about last year's attendance, where I stated a number of about 18.2 days are missed by the average teacher. And if you look at our records, and again, I'm sure I'll get a public records request for it, it's not a problem, so that people can see that we have a challenge with two things. Making sure that we have a great educator in front of our kids every single day, and we have a challenge in finding teachers to replace them when our teachers are out. So what we have created is this challenge of when teachers are out, we have to find a sub, maybe. And this past year, the point I was trying to make was we had to build a budget of about $1 million to pay for substitutes and otherwise. to kind of combat that. And my hope was, with that $1 million, is to actually give it back to teachers as an incentive. And that was really the response I was getting at in the question, and I apologize if that is not what came across.
So are you acknowledging that that information was inaccurate? That you were saying that because you stated that you did not include FMLA, paid leave, or unpaid leave, which is untrue.
What does that mean?
So can you please acknowledge that that information was inaccurate, that you did include paid leave, including the leave that happened because of the teachers that you walked out with? There was one teacher who did not get a hearing for 4.5 weeks, was put directly back in her classroom after the incident was deemed not a problem or whatever. So her kids missed 4.5 weeks of class time because your administration took 4.5 weeks to get her a hearing, and that's included in the teacher absence.
So let me say a few things, which I appreciate that you brought it back to kids. My responsibility, not only as a leader of this district, but as a parent, is to make sure that whoever is in front of our kids is the right person and will keep our kids safe. And the one thing I won't apologize is putting safety first. That is a priority. And if the investigation takes an extended amount of time, I understand the challenge that creates. However, I do not want to make that mistake and put someone in front of someone else's child, because I would not want that to happen to my child, and for something that goes awry. Now, granted, nothing went awry. I'm glad we had figured it out and we moved on, and I do apologize for the length of the investigation. However, I want to make sure we're on the right side of it and not on the wrong side of it when we think of our kids. If I can. Mr. Hayden.
Let's assume that 18 teachers and 18 absences are there all the time. Did you take a look to see why those 18 days are out? Are they out? Are they out because the teachers are sick, or are they out because they're not supported?
Yeah.
Are they out because they're being chastised?
Yeah.
It's not always just sickness that they're out.
Yeah. So I think there's a few things there, Mr. Hayden, that I think you're hitting on. We would love to have more information, and I keep stepping in this water. Ray warned me of this water, I apologize. We would love to have more information on why our teachers call out, but the system that we do have that reports us, in which I get, for example, every morning, I'm able to see, I get an email for every absence. So every morning I see the list of absences, and it tells me what the indicator is, whether it's sick or they take an accrued day, but it doesn't give me much more information than that. The only other report that I'm able to pull is, well, there's a couple other reports, but the only one that kind of gives information are like the days of the week they call out, but doesn't give us information around why. The intent of the engagement survey, but I want to be clear that I think the error we made on our end when we asked so much demographic information, it created fear in our teachers to respond, because in the survey, it was asking for, what are the challenges? So we probably would have gotten more of that information if we did a better job on the front end in creating a way for our teachers to feel that they could give honest and retaliation-free information. So I think right now, to answer your question, we don't have the capability to understand deeply why, other than kind of the superficial indicators.
Hey Dave, if you have interest in why teachers are absent, give your own public records request I made with your people. I can tell you the answers. And I can tell you, and you know that you included FMLA and other reasons in the 18.2 that you created, and you told everybody.
Okay.
Stop misrepresenting the attendance of teachers.
Okay.
If you want to see it, I'll have a discussion with you. I got it right here. It came from your office.
Gotcha. Jay, we did speak about it the other day, and I look forward to continued conversation about it. But I think Mr. Hayden's question around the why is still the one that I think we need to find answers to. I saw a few hands over here as well. Yes?
We're talking about teachers absent and kids absent.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons kids are absent, I believe, is because when you have PD days, you bring a child in at 7 o'clock for high school, and they get fed breakfast first. They go to their class for an hour and a half or whatever, and then they have to be given lunch, and they leave this building by 10:30. They don't even want to get up, and parents, I can understand. Why would they get them up for 2 hours in school. Can't you do PD days after school? I mean, this is actually making it worse for us as far as the state goes, because I would bet you, I'm sure you have, you know, the statistics on it. I'm sure that that's one of our biggest days absent, and that's once a month.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I don't disagree. So I'm glad you brought that up. I think there's two things there. One of which, the idea of doing it after school, I think is a fantastic idea. However, I also am very sensitive to folks who have things to do after school, may have other jobs and things of that nature, to be fair, right? I mean, I think that's viable, you know, for a lot of folks around the room. They have children or otherwise to go to. However, we also realize, to your point, the data does indicate those are our lower attended days. The attempt was to do two things, right? One was to find a way to provide the professional development necessary for us to continue to grow as individuals, but also just realizing, and this is more of a plea for kids in the sense, when we don't have school, sometimes kids don't have food. And it was an attempt to ensure that at least our kids get something that day, while also we can continue to grow as people. Now, granted, we are going to do something different next year. There's a couple different calendars that are floating around to kind of rectify that piece. But that was the tension. I just want to let you know the thinking behind that tension. But I appreciate the suggestion as well. I think I saw a gentleman's hand there, and then Ms. Nazario there in the back. Sorry, just 1 second so I can hear you. Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Just want to say thank you very much. I'm not a teacher here, and I'm not sure if this is the correct forum to ask this question or not.
Perfectly fine.
But I am a parent. I've been a long-time resident of Lorain. I grew up here. I went to the original Longfellow here, grew up and graduated from Lorain High, the original Lorain High. And I know right now I am a parent, but I'm also a business owner of this community. And I know a lot of times it seems like a lot of the teachers here are kind of upset. I do apologize. I'm not sure all the stuff that's going on in the system. But one question I have, one concern I have is that I know the school system right now is pushing more and more of the college for kids to do. Now, Lorain is more of a blue-collar type work system, so a lot of kids do not want to go to college or have that ambition to go to college. I personally did not go to college. I went through a technical school, got apprenticeship program. I have 3 kids. 2 of my kids have graduated from Lorain High. I have a kid right now in Toledo. I have 1 at LCC. My 3rd kid, though, he's a little bit different. He's not like that. He does not aspire to go to college, but he wants to be in some type of construction aspect or hands-on type person.
That's awesome.
Now, when I went to school here, we used to have 3 high schools, and back then we had quite a variety of different vocational classes that the kids could take. So my son now, you know, he's not looking for college. He's looking for something more of the hands-on stuff, and looking through the website, there's really nothing that the school system offers. Now, I know a lot of the other schools around here have a partnership with, like, JVS, where they have that ability to go there to get the education for construction. Lorain does not participate in that. Okay. And I understand why they did it years ago when I was in school, because there were so many kids, there's so many high schools, and we have that. But now Lorain does not offer any of those types of stuff for it.
We do.
Well, I offer a handful of things. I was looking online last night on the website. For instance, you have a class for heating and air. You have a class for auto body. You have a class for culinary. And I think there's a couple other classes. When I went to school here, there used to be welding, there used to be mechanics, there used to be carpentry, there used to be electrical, there used to be culinary, there used to be secretary, there used to be a lot of different stuff. Now Lorain does not offer that for the kids today. Okay. And I see a lot of the kids, just from me as a business owner and donating my time to the community for certain things I do, and a lot of them don't have that, and they want that hands-on stuff. Right. So it's just a suggestion to either bring some more of those classes back or to allow Lorain City Schools to try to get them into JVS, because as of right now, I'm personally trying to get my kid to JVS, but I can't because Lorain does not have that with them. So that's all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So I want to answer a couple parts to that. And just to be clear, all of the programs you named we have. We actually do have in the high school. We have, and the reason why we don't participate in JVS because we have such a robust, industry, kind of track or a program that allows kids to participate in those things that they want to get their hands on. And I'll allow Ms. Haney to kind of speak to those a little bit because she leads and is working a little bit closer to that so you can hear all those pieces. But I also heard something else very, very important from what you're saying. One, kids need things, there are a bunch of kids who want to work with their hands. They may not be on the college track. They absolutely want to go from high school into a career, right? And there's a bunch of careers that pay pretty darn well once you leave high school.
Construction field is right now, saying to this person part of that construction doesn't matter. It's carpentry, masonry doesn't matter. It's one of the highest paying jobs right now.
Yep.
And there is low people looking for that type of work. Yeah. And a lot of these people, like for instance, I have one guy that works for me now. He's an apprentice. So I'm actually paying him to go for his apprenticeship. When he graduates, he's going to be making the $35, $40 an hour. He's not going to have any debts for college. So my oldest son right now, who's going to Toledo University, he's going to come out of college with $80,000 debt. Unfortunately, he might come out of that and make that smart, but he's going to be in debt so much where construction, there's more of an opportunity for people. It's just my opinion, right?
I think you're absolutely right. I 110% agree. I do think the piece that we need to do better as a school system, it sounds like one, we probably need to advertise all of the different options that we do actually have and that are available to kids, for one, and make it very clear their opportunities. I think two, start earlier, right? So not when they just get to high school, introduce them to these opportunities, but start earlier so they know what those opportunities look like in elementary and middle. And three, something that struck me, sir, that you said that I appreciate was the fact that we as adults have a ton of influence that we just don't know we contain and possess. And sometimes we allow and use that influence to maybe push our kids down one track or one program path or whatever it might be, and not allow our kids to realize what they want to do. And so the idea in the Lorain Promise, Commitment 5 outlines the idea that by 2022, 100% of our kids will graduate with an associate's degree or an industry credential so that they have options. And I think for way too long we said, you're going to college and or you're going to get a job, instead of allowing our kids the opportunity to figure out where their passion lies. And so I appreciate the comment. I take three things away. One, improve the way that we can communicate the programs we have. Two, figure out how do we get to kids so they can realize their passion and do what they want and see what's out there for them. And then three, we have to look at maybe expanding some of those programs if there are things that kids really do want and we don't have them. But I do want to allow Ms. Haney to just speak to, but very briefly, the programs we do have available.
Can I have that one?
Sure.
And then we'll do questions.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Amanda Haney. I'm the director of early college at the high school, but I also work really closely with the career and technical director. We have 13 programs at the high school, all of which are on the career technical side, and a couple of them have actual college credit built into them, and then some of them have articulated credit. And what that means is basically that they earn college credit when they leave high school, as long as they complete the program with a B average. All of our programs also have an industry credential so that they can get started. We do have welding and auto. We have 2 construction programs. We have culinary and hospitality, and actually last year we opened the restaurant to the public in the springtime, and it was set on certain days where the public could come in and eat and be served and greeted by our students. We have sports, health, and fitness. We have 2 medical programs, one that leads you down towards an STNA path, and we actually have several students who leave the high school with their STNA license. We have a medical assisting program that's in conjunction with the college. All of our programs are with LCCC. And we did do an open house last year at the beginning of the year and the year before for the community. And then recruitment happens every year in the spring for all students that are in the 9th grade and 10th grade so that they can start kind of gaining interest in those programs. And then they start the program usually as a 10th grader or 11th grader, and they're all 2-year programs. All of the programs have 4 classes in them, so every student takes 4 classes in that related field. There are a couple more of them, but you put me on the spot. So.
Sorry.
And then we have the whole other early college side where students earn their associate's degree while they're in high school. They can do that at the Lorain High campus, or they can do that at the LCCC campus.
So Ms. Haney, I actually want to keep you on the spot for 1 second, because actually the first question that is here is what % of our kids are in the early college program at high school?
So percent?
Or I guess you can give a number.
Number, we have approximately 450 students in the high school that participate in the program. That's 9 through 12. And we have about an additional, I want to say 150 at the Elyria campus. So those students are Elyria and Lorain combined. So there's I guess the rule is at the maximum there's 50 students that come from Elyria city schools and 50 students that can come from Lorain. And neither school has really been at their max for the last couple years. So it's not a full program over there completely, but we do have about 150 kids.
Great, thank you. Thank you so very much. Great job.
What about Ohio State Young Scholars? Ohio State Young Scholars?
Yeah, so we have, sorry. Yes, they are. So the Young Scholars Program, the Young Scholars Program is in the high school, as well as Upward Bound. Those are 2 other college programs that we have that kind of are in the high school. Upward Bound is a program in the summer that allows students to go to Kent and stay on campus and experience campus life. And they take classes, not ones that they earn college credit for, but classes for like leadership and things like that. And then we do have Young Scholars, that's through Ohio State. And those students are in the program through the 4 years that they're in high school, and they work with their advisor that is actually, we have an advisor from Ohio State that works in the building, and she works with those students, and then once they leave, as long as they meet the requirements, they're able to attend OSU, my understanding is for free. And they are taking applications now, I believe, in the 9th grade? Yes, 9th grade. So, and a little bit of 8th grade.
And a little bit of 10th grade.
And a little bit of 10th grade? Okay. I don't actually work with Young Scholars, so.
About Young Scholars.
Yes.
And, I was told my daughter, she was looking into it. She's an 8th.
Okay.
She was looking into it, but she was told that she couldn't take Young Scholars because I was. So why is that, and how do you take that away? I don't know the answer to that because I don't work with Young Scholars. Young Scholars is ran by Miss Roman, who just got married, and I'm sorry, I don't remember her new name. Diaz. Miss Diaz. So she would be the person to contact regarding that. I don't know the admissions rules for that program. But what can I do to figure out how she can get it if a child who wants to do it and is being held back because I don't know.
Yeah, so I can get with you after and give you the information for Miss Romans or Miss Diaz so that you can contact her directly. She is the building rep for that program. So I would want you to contact her directly to make sure you get the right information.
Yeah. I have 2 that I definitely still want to read. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Nazari, I did say you before I went to these questions. I apologize. Want me to do these 2 while the mic comes back to you? Okay. The mic, if you can go to the mic to Ms. Nazari. I'm going to read these 2 and go through these 2 first. Since about only 1/3 of jobs in the country require a bachelor's plus, why only ACT to assess post-high school readiness? So part of this, I think, is a broader question on what we are, how we're kind of evaluated as a school district. And I think one of the measures is the ACT. It's not the only measure, right? So when we think about high school graduation, when we think about the number of kids that get a industry credential, those things all are reflected on the report card. However, it is a metric that I think is standardized enough to talk about so people are familiar with it, rather than it being the only metric. So there is more than one metric. The other reality is too, as we think about and we see and hear from our Gen Zers in that commercial or that short story clip, is that we actually don't know what our kids will need in years. 60% of the jobs that our kids will one day assume are not even created yet. So we have to think through that reality on how we best prepare for that reality. But to answer the question, it is not only the ACT. Does the high school do walkthroughs? Elementary teachers are subject to walkthroughs every single day. Deans and principals are well aware of what teaching goes on in elementary. What about high school? Yes, the answer is yes. I think it's fair to say there's a couple high school administrators in the back nodding their head. They also do participate in walkthroughs through classrooms. Okay, Ms. Nazario, is it back there for you? Okay, great.
Yeah, I just have a question. Looking at the attendance, I have heard that the teachers are going to be evaluated on two main things.
Okay.
Attendance and writing. Is that correct?
Attendance and writing.
They're going to have a very big part of attendance and writing in their evaluation chunk. Is that correct?
Attendance, no.
So it will not be attendance? Okay. I have heard from many different teachers at many different schools it would be attendance and writing.
Got it. I'm sorry. I thought I had my mind
if you can answer to me, how can a teacher in her classroom affect the attendance of her students? I mean, right now we are in the flu season. They said on the news that the next 3 weeks is going to be the worst for the flu. So if they are missing 10% of their class because they all got the flu, every other year we received a letter home from the health department telling us, keep your kids home for this, 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 and this. This year we didn't receive that. We were told every day, send your kids to school. My daughter cried when she had a fever because she was going to ruin her class's pajama party. Another daughter, she was kept home because she was throwing up through the night. She wanted to go to school. I wouldn't let her. She missed the dance. I have since talked to the principal. That has changed, but she missed the school dance because I kept her home because she was sick. How can a teacher, how can they affect that? How are they supposed to? I mean, and do you have 100% attendance?
Yeah.
Do you and your administration have 100% attendance that you feel that the students and you feel that the teachers should have 100% attendance rate and they should not be sick? Do you and your administration have that?
So, I apologize first. I misunderstood attendance, the attendance group you were talking about. I thought you meant teachers. I was in teachers. Is that on the teacher evaluation?
No, the student attendance.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
And I have one more when you're done. The part of the writing.
No problem.
Okay, go ahead.
So as far as and those are the student growth measures that we're using. The goal of those student growth measures were to do two things. One, we want to make sure that we realize the work that goes into making sure all of our kids are ready for the next level, or even every single day, is a collective effort. And the goal was to get schools to come together and together realize the importance of having their kids there every single day and writing, right? And I don't think there's a teacher in this room that would argue that it isn't important to have kids in their classroom to learn writing, right?
I 100% agree, but if they're sick,
right,
they shouldn't be upset that I have my daughter crying.
Yeah.
She has a fever.
Right.
I have been told in years past she has to be fever-free for 24 hours to send her to school.
Yeah.
I was never told that this year, but I know that in years past I have. I kept her home so she didn't get anybody else, or the teacher for that matter, sick.
Correct.
And so she now is upset and crying that I'm keeping her home. That's a problem that I have, and then the teachers are being penalized per se because I kept my daughter home because she was sick.
Right, and I think there's another question that is out there, and this is why we also ask our kids questions around how they feel about school. And this year was no different. So last year we did a survey, this year we did a very similar survey, and it's interesting to note, and I agree, if a child is sick, we should stay home. If any human being, right, like ultimately is on the way, that's understandable. For kids, the question then becomes at a point where they make a choice. And they make a choice whether or not they want to wake up and go to school or stay home. And as educators, the power we have in motivating our kids to come to school every single day is extremely powerful and is awesome to see. And so I think we underestimate the power of a teacher a child who might just be like, run a little bit late, and they have a choice and they're saying, I could stay home.
Again, I feel like you're twisting my words as I'm turning it back that a teacher doesn't have that. I don't think that. As a teacher, when I taught, the best things was when I had a parent tell me,
Her kindergarten son, I was doing a long-term sub, didn't want to go at the beginning of the year. He came in every day and gave me a hug. I know that what a teacher does in the classroom can make a big difference. I've talked many a times where I feel that a couple meetings ago where you said that when I had said that the teachers, they sometimes need to be a friend. They need to be a parent sometimes. They need to be a nurse. They need to be a listening ear. So I agree with that 100%. But you can't say that these kids are, my daughters have had perfect attendance many years. Well, they were sick this year. So now you're telling me that because my one daughter missed 2 days because she had a fever, now the teacher's gonna be penalized.
Right.
I don't think that should be part of their evaluation at all. None. How can that be their evaluation? You don't know what that student at all has going on at home. For them to get up in the morning and say, I'm not going to school today. They don't have a parent there to get them up and get them ready for school. They don't have a parent there to say, you know, you're gonna do good in school today, you're gonna have a good day. So you don't know how that is. So to penalize the teacher on that and make that be part of their evaluation as to where they will be next year just does not seem fair to me.
Yeah, I think what's interesting too, though, when you make with that statement, kind of just hits my ears. I want to be cautious of you know, kind of labeling kids in ways where they may not have certain things. So I'm always cautious on how I approach this because you're bringing a valid point and I don't want to skirt it. I do think in those situations that you're describing, that's that power of that teacher again. And I think there's that moment where we could realize, and realize, and teachers understand this, right? There are kids that literally wake up to see that teacher every single day. And I think that can't be undersold, and I think it's equally important.
Is he talking about a teacher evaluation that they get every year?
Teacher evaluation.
I'm trying to say, you said every year the teachers get evaluated, right?
Correct.
Is she talking about a teacher being punished because a kid didn't come to school?
Teachers' evaluation is based upon student attendance.
But what I'm saying is that when they let me finish, please. When they get the evaluation, let's say two people.
Hold on 1 second. I just want to let her finish. Yeah, she wants to understand.
Get this straight in my mind, okay? You have it in your mind, let me get it in mine. Now, I'm saying, all right, I'm getting evaluated. So in my classroom, I have maybe 5 kids that missed maybe 10 or 20 days, just making up a day. So that's gonna go against me because my child, because the kids in my class are sick, it's gonna go against me in my evaluation.
School-wide, the entire state.
Wait a minute, school-wide, that doesn't mean my personal or from the state evaluation.
No, it's
my
a teacher.
personal evaluation or the state evaluation?
It's the teacher's evaluation at that school site. It's not from the state. It's not from the state. I will take one last question. I don't know how I can decide. I want to go to a voice I haven't heard yet. I want to go to a voice I have not heard yet, and this gentleman has been patient. I want to make sure. Okay, let me just have this gentleman answer. Go ahead, sir. Hold on 1 second. I just want to make sure this gentleman has the floor. I wanted to go to someone who didn't speak. Yeah, that's all. It's okay. Sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. At the beginning of the program, we had an audio visual, and there was a lot in there about a business model. I would like to know, what is the ultimate goal of a business model?
To reach your outcomes.
Money, right? Profit.
No, outcomes.
We need to have good business practices in education, but we need to follow an educational model. There was also indication about one of the first questions. Not everybody was able to participate. Not everybody knew we were going to have these electronic things. Do children learn differently? That's a loaded question, because I could have taught in a school with, I taught 29 years, not in Lorain. No, excuse me, 30 years. I could have taught in a school with a blackboard slate. I could have taught in a school with blackboards. I taught in a school where I made use of an overhead projector, which I stood away from so that the people could see what I was projecting. I wish I could have taught in a school that had whiteboards, because I could have done a very good job with whiteboards. However, I retired 22 years ago before whiteboards became popular. There are many different tools that educators use. Those are all tools. But the basic education starts with interaction between the student, and you notice I use the word student. Not everyone is a scholar. It is the interaction between the student and the teacher, regardless of what tools they use, whether it be a workbook, whether it be a slate, whether it be a whiteboard. Unfortunately, too much in our society today is based on business for profit, including our government. Yes, we want good business practices in government, but we don't want the leaders to be in it for profit. We've heard a lot of talk today that was a lot of talk, but we didn't really hear the actual specific solutions to problems. I would like to know, I have, well, I'm not going to tell you my own personal history because there is retaliation in this system. I didn't teach in this system, but I know many people who do. Where do your children go to school?
My kids, my five-year-old just turned 5, so he's not really ready to go to school. My other one is 17 months, so they're
okay. And where do you live?
I live in Avon.
Avon, okay, thank you.
So, with that said, I think what I take away more than anything from tonight is that we have a tremendously passionate community, and we have a lot of work collectively to do. And it is our job to keep our heads down and keep working forward and continue these conversations so that we can get to outcomes for kids. As challenging as it may be at times to realize how to get there or the challenges we may face, we have to continue pushing forward for our kids. I thank you for being here tonight, and have a safe drive home.
This has been a production of Lorain City Schools TV 20 WLCS.